As I sit with Love himself in the house of love, I often reflect on the love lessons he has gently woven into my heart through the years. And this is one I hold especially dear. Over the years, one of the beautiful things I have learned in the house of love is that just because something harmful was placed into my hands doesn't mean I have to place it back into the hands that placed it in mine. There may be words I could say. There may even be words that would feel justified in the moment. But pain speaking to pain has never brought healing to a wounded heart. I have learned that adding more brokenness to what is already broken only creates more regret. Because Love himself created me with a heart that loves peace, unity, and harmony, I have never enjoyed conflict or confrontation and don't like when others instigate it. For some, that's how they naturally react. That is quite challenging in relationships, especially for those like me who move toward peace and naturally step away from unhealthy, unloving communication. Some people naturally react with harsh, critical, hurtful, ridiculing language and still expect a positive response in return. I have learned this is where silence becomes golden. Through the years, I have discovered that what some people call weakness, Love himself often calls strength. What some people call silence, heaven sometimes calls self-control. And what some people misunderstand as doing nothing is often a child of love choosing not to become what hurt them. So I'd rather carry it to Love himself than hand it back to the one who handed it to me. Not because I approve of what happened and not because I don't have feelings, but because I don't want someone else's choices to determine the kind of person I become. I don't want wounded words to become my words. I don't want harshness to become my language. I don't want criticism to become my language. I don't want ridicule to become my language. I don't want accusations to become my language. I don't want the wounds that hurt me to become the wounds I hand back. Over the years, I have learned that I don't have to become what hurt me. I don't have to return verbal whiplash for verbal whiplash, criticism for criticism, ridicule for ridicule, or harshness for harshness. There have been times when people misunderstood my heart, criticized things precious to me, ridiculed what they didn't understand, or created narratives that simply weren't true. Those things hurt, but I chose not to return criticism for criticism or ridicule for ridicule. I chose to leave what belongs to others in their hands and place what belongs to me into his. What others choose to do belongs to them. What I choose to do with it belongs to me. And so, instead of allowing what was meant for harm to continue through me, I place it into the hands of Love himself. I trust him with what I cannot change and allow him to turn what was meant for harm into something beautiful. Not every hurt has to become another hurt passed along. By his grace, the cycle of wounded reactions, harsh words, criticism, ridicule, accusations, and verbal whiplash can and will stop with me. What was done to me does not have to continue through me. Over the years, I have also learned that silence is not agreement. Silence does not mean their accusations are true. Silence does not mean their criticism is true. Silence does not mean their narrative is true. Just because I didn't defend myself doesn't mean falsehood becomes truth. Love himself knows the truth, and truth does not become a lie because I chose peace over proving myself. I share this with you today not because I have done this perfectly, but because I have learned that overcoming evil with good does not mean pretending evil never happened. It means refusing to let it decide who I become. It means allowing his love to have the final word instead of my pain. One of the beautiful things learned in the house of love is that what others choose is theirs, what I choose is mine, and with his help I choose to let healing continue through me instead of hurt. Before we leave the house of love, Love himself invites both hearts to pause and reflect. If you have chosen not to return harsh words for harsh words, criticism for criticism, ridicule for ridicule, or verbal whiplash for verbal whiplash, I want to tip my heart's hat to you. I am so proud of you. Not because remaining silent is easy, and not because your heart didn't have words it could have spoken, but because choosing the love road requires courage. Anyone can react. Anyone can return hurt for hurt. But it takes strength, wisdom, and love to respond in a way that refuses to become what hurt you. People may misunderstand your silence. They may create narratives about you. They may call it indifference, weakness, punishment, or pride. But love himself knows your heart. Heaven smiles when a child of love chooses not to return evil for evil. Choosing healing over hurting, responding instead of reacting, and walking the higher road of the love road speaks louder about who you are than any hurtful words you could have spoken. And if you are the one sitting on the other side of that silence, there is something to consider too. Before believing the worst, before creating a story in your mind, before assuming they no longer care, remember the kind of person you know them to be at heart level. Don't let a narrative created in pain speak louder than the person you've known in love. Their silence may not be hatred, punishment, or rejection. Their silence may simply be love refusing to become what hurt it. They may be choosing not to return what wounded them. They may be loving you enough not to hand back the verbal whipping they received. Silence is not always the absence of love. Sometimes it is love choosing not to become what hurt it. And if you have been the one who spoke the hurtful words, love himself gently invites you to ask yourself whether you have truly considered the weight of your words. Have you sought understanding more than being right? Have you spent more time creating narratives about them than trying to understand their heart? Are you willing to own your part and help heal what was wounded? And if you have been the one who absorbed those words and chose not to hand them back, I want to tip my heart's hat to you once again. I am so proud of you. Not because remaining silent was easy, but because choosing the higher road and the love road takes courage. Choosing healing over hurting takes strength. Choosing to let what was done to you stop with you speaks louder about who you are than any hurtful words you could have spoken. One of the greatest miracles in the house of love is not that love himself prevents every wound from reaching our hearts, but that he teaches us that what was done to us does not have to continue through us. What others choose is theirs. What we choose is ours. And with his help, healing can continue through us instead of hurt. I think that lesson began in my heart long before I even had words for it. As a little girl, whenever something hurtful was said or done to me, and an apology came later, I made a quiet decision deep within my heart. I didn't want to become that kind of person. I didn't want to say things I would later regret. I didn't want to wound someone and then have to come back later and say, "I'm sorry for what I said." So I learned that some things are simply better left unsaid. I'd rather be silent than speak words that would only require an apology later. I'd rather carry it to love himself than place hurtful words into someone else's heart. Not because I don't have feelings. Not because I don't have something I could say. But because I know words have power, and once they leave our lips we cannot call them back. Over the years, love himself has shown me that silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is wisdom. Sometimes it is self-control. Sometimes it is love refusing to become what hurt it. And sometimes the strongest response is the hurtful one we choose not to speak. So whether you are the one who spoke the words or the one who absorbed them, whether you are the one longing to be understood or the one learning to understand, love himself still invites both of your hearts to come home, because healing is always welcome in the house of love. Heart to heart in his love, Momo Smiley.